Hello everyone, and welcome to uh, every F1 car in Assetto Corsa, or this comparison through each era of F1 in Assetto Corsa. We obviously don't have every car in here. Some that double up, like the 1967 cars. There's two of them. We don't feature both of them. We only got the one that was better in the championship, that being the Lotus. We're starting off here in the 1950s, the very first post-war Formula One series. These cars were front engine, got those skinny little bicycle tires, don't offer very much grip at all. You can see the car as we go just through a rouge there, just extremely understeery and just sliding around. You can see all the adjustments that I'm making, even just in a straight line here, because the car is really just unstable and trying to, well, not really trying to spin, but just trying to understeer. And yeah, and you see there, the problem with this car is, especially like modern cars, what you want really is you want some oversteer on the way in to get yourself turned in, and then you want understeer on the way out, that way you don't spin on your exit. But it's quite the opposite. You get a lot of understeer on the way into the corner because, of course, I mean, all the weight is at the front, so you don't really have much grip. The rear is not really getting that pendulum effect where it's trying to step out on you, and instead the front is just dragging. And then when you get to the edge, or to the exit of the corner, you got your rear is very light and doesn't have very much grip, and it just goes out, steps on you. So obviously coming back to starting our final sector. We're in the second sector now, but you could just see the cars just dancing. This is more keen, and I wouldn't be surprised, actually. I'd confidently say that this car, this F1 car really, would be slower than modern supercars. That is 100% slower than modern GT3 cars. And you see just the amount of understeer we have there coming on the Blanchiment. It's quite astonishing that the series that we see today as F1 started as this. I mean, it's quite remarkable. So, coming through Blanchiment, and this was the V12 Maserati 250F. The 12-cylinder, not the 6-cylinder. Breaking down to the final chicane. It looks like you're going pretty slow, but it's mostly because you're sitting so high. If you try to go any faster, you'd just be spinning. And we are spinning, basically all the way into third gear up to the finish line. There we are. Okay, now we are to the Lotus 25. Now this car, at this point, the FIA was trying to slow down the F1 cars. They were worried about the cars being too fast. So, as you've seen there, this car has only not even 200 horsepower compared to the Maserati, which had 300, over 300. So, it's got the same tires, the same little bicycle tires, not very much grip. But the main difference here in this Lotus is that it is mid-engine. The engine is now behind this. And you can see, even though we're down in power by over 100 horsepower, about 115 horsepower down on that Maserati, because we're able to carry so much more speed into the corner and out of the corner, it really doesn't make much of an effect. And I think we'll have a side-by-side after this lap here, but I'm pretty sure that the Maserati is only just barely quicker at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Coming into the chicane here, you can see how planted the car is. I'm still making those little micro adjustments because, again, little bicycle tires, and we don't have any aero yet. But still, coming down to this turn, you can see it's just so planted. It was a bit of slide on the entry, but the Maserati had a big slide on the entry to that corner. And then No Name just absolutely, just don't even have to think about it. This car compared to the Maserati, this Lotus Type 25, it's just no thought into it. And even compared to the other mid-engine cars, because it doesn't have much power, it's just, you don't really have to think about it. And I know that's, for someone who maybe comes from like an F1 game or something like that, driving this, you'd be like, no, this is ridiculously hard to drive. And yeah, but compared to something like the Lotus 49, which we'll see next, it's very easy to drive, I'd argue. So coming on to the launch mode, you can see a bit of understeer, but we're fine. Coming on to launch mode, get too much in the inside curve, get a little bit of slide, but it's easily corrected. Just kind of holding it down. And this car, 5-speed, V8 behind us. And we're able to take that flight, but we're not just able to take this flight. It's very close, because, I mean, we're only going about, I'd say, maybe 120 at that point, because, I mean, only, not even 200 horsepower. Big slide into the final chicane, but, I mean, at this rate, compared to the Maserati, we're so far ahead now that it doesn't really even matter. I think that illustrates the point that cornering grip, especially in this type of racing, in Formula 1 racing, is a lot more important than straight line speed. We already see, this is what I was talking about, even though the Maserati's got that massive power advantage, it's already just falling behind, and this is where the massive straight on Spa-Francorchamps is still, even though we're on this massive straight, Maserati is still very far behind, just because of Eau Rouge and these slight bends in the first turn just give the Lotus Type 25 so much more of a run that the power advantage of the Maserati is basically negligible. And then you see, coming down into this chicane at the back of the kennel, the Maserati, you can see just massive understeer. And you also notice how much farther up the Maserati is, or we are seated in the Maserati. Alright. So, Spa-Francorchamps, that's what we're doing this on. We're going to have every F1 car all the way, in Assetto Corsa, all the way up from the Maserati 250F until the SF70H. These are all base cars. There are no mods in this video. The Lotus Exos 125, which is in this game, will not be included though, because that is not an F1 car. We do have a V8 F1 car though, the Ferrari F138. But the reason why I chose Spa is because when you try to think of an iconic F1 track that has been there from the beginning, that isn't Monza, because Monza just kind of, it's quite biased to top speed, Monza. So going to a track that has a good mix of corners, or at least an adequate mix of corners, to not just completely take out, you know, a car like the Lotus 25, just losing an advantage because it's slow in the straights. Spa was what came to mind, and I don't really think that anyone will argue with that. I mean, if you do, put it in the comments, but I think Spa was the best decision, or the best track that we could have chosen. So now you can see that the Maserati is just now braking for the final chicane, whilst the Lotus is just finishing our lap. I mean, it's not even close, really. The mid-engine cars were just destroyed the front-engine cars whenever they were introduced, and that's why every F1 car since has been mid-engine. Here we are with the Lotus Type 49, so this came in the 60s, in the era where F1 decided that it was, again, going to be the fastest cars in the world, or at least fastest racing series in the world, because before them, that Lotus 25 that we just saw, as I said, the FIA was trying to slow down these cars, and only not even 200 horsepower. I mean, you guys think these cars were slower than the touring cars of their time. So now we got the Lotus Type 49 same mid-engine. It's basically the same car with no aero, but it's longer, wider. It's got fatter tires, and it's got 410 horsepower DFB V8 pushing it from the rear. So breaking into the back of the camel straight, missing fourth gear, as will become a theme you'll see throughout this video. That's something that I like to do, but we kept it going straight, so that's all that matters. So you can see that the car is a lot more lively because the car just has more mechanical grip because of the tires. It's a lot more, you're actually hitting the limit of the car a lot more, and also there's a lot more power behind it as well. I mean, going down to Fuan, you see that it's a lot quicker, and you can see that it's only a bit of understeer. We only get a little, the car just tries to snap on me at the exit, but pretty grippy comparatively, at least to the last two, but still very lively. And at this point, we still are not on slick tires. We still do not have aero. Aero will be discovered in this era of car, and the Lotus 49 in particular will have aero pieces put on through the ages, and so much so that the next car that we're going to see, the Lotus 72D, is pretty much a Lotus 49 heavily evolved, like an extreme evolution of the Lotus 49. And we'll see that as our Lotus 49 comes to cross the line here. Basically the same as the last entry, but just more powerful and more grippy. So here, as I was saying, you can see it's pretty much the same, just with an extreme, you know, it's got the giant arrow on it, but it's still got that DFB V8 pushing 440 horsepower now. So 30 horsepower gain, but the big difference is that we're on slicks and we have aero now, so we are so much quicker. So going down into a Rouge, it's not even comparable. We have slicks, so, and aero that got us better run down the hill. And you see, when we came over the hill, we got a little bit of a snap, but we kept it together. Going down the straight, almost hitting the limiter, missing fourth gear as per tradition, cutting in, just carrying in so much more speed. And these cars have just absolutely massive rear tires, so the rear is absolutely planted. The aero doing its job. Coming down here, are a little bit nervous, but nowhere near as the previous three. And no name is just, don't even have to think, you just put it in and then get on the throttle. And coming down to Puron, this corner, really just, this shows the aero working more than anything. This the amount of speed that we're able to carry now because of that aero at high speeds is the main thing with the Lotus 49. It still just did not have aero, so it was pretty bad in the high speed stuff. And through the rest of the lap, pretty much the same deal. We're flat out. We're not going to be able to take Blanchimont flat yet. Still not able to take Blanchimont flat. You get very close to it, but you still just have to do a little bit of a lift and brake. Pull it in, you can see the car is just really trying to understeer because those front tires are really small compared to the rears. Also, this is very simplified aero compared to, especially compared to today, where we got the large rollers and everything, and now in 2022, got the crazy floors and everything. So now the Ferrari, this is obviously Niki Lauda's car, now flat 12, pushing about 500 horsepower. It's basically the same in terms of the aero and tires. It's just, again, just better. It's making slight increments each year. It's better engine, a lot better engine, that's the main thing, but better tires and better aero, though to a lesser extent than the engine. Going through a rouge, so you can see it's just almost just no thought. Getting onto the grass there a little bit as we go through Marion. Coming down the Kimmel Straight, reaching 160 miles an hour easy. Car doing a little bit of understeer, but also the rear being a lot more lively than the 72, which was just absolutely planted at the rear. This car still has those massive rear tires, which we won't see disappear until the 98T, which was next. But the fronts are they're a lot bigger in terms of, ratio, front to rear size. And it's pretty much the same deal, it's just a quicker version of the 72D. A lot less understeer. The car bites a lot more at the front, and it's got a lot more power. And of course our center of gravity is a lot lower as well. That's the main reason why we have a flat 12, not a V12. Flat 12 actually coming from experimenting with the angles of the V pattern and the V12, so much so that it goes flat, so we can have the engine as far down as possible in the back of the car, so our center of gravity is the lowest it can be. And still not just barely not flat. Maybe if we had our max downforce setting, we might be able to take Blanchimont flat, but not yet, especially on this track. A lot more straights, a bit of a lock up into the final chicane, but this car's so much quicker. And I didn't try to just, go at it for like an hour with each car. I just tried to do a lap back to back and just tell you the differences that I felt between each car. And as soon as I got a comparable lap, then it was fine. So now the 98T, our first turbo car. This one, of course, Ayrton Senna drove. Got nearly 1,200 horsepower pushing. We're using 100% turbo, qualifying tire, the full shebang, going ridiculously quick. Of course, now the cars will not race with this because qualifying tires would disintegrate after one lap, and the engine would blow up after one lap as well with 100% turbo. But hey, this is a video game, so it doesn't really matter to us. The car is just insanely grippy and insanely powerful though. As you can see, it's just flying through. We actually took our Rouge flat for the first time, and we're going to take Blanchimont flat for the first time as well on this lap. The main thing, this car, despite how fast it is still a manual, a 6-speed manual, and each of these cars has been a manual until this next car. So, just consider this, having to heel and toe and clutch and each pattern a 6-speed whilst driving this just machine of death, trying to control it. And this car it's trying to kill you every corner. As you can see, that massive snap. Blanchimont just got a little bit of the curve on the inside, and the car was just knowing we're going to go backwards. But we caught it, thankfully, going here flat through Blanchimont, going near 200 miles an hour, and then late braking. The brakes very good on this car. And then we have to be careful not to get the turbo going through the bus stop, and then on the exit, spinning all the way up in the third gear. The rear trying to overtake the front, but unsuccessfully. Now, after 2004, there is a bit of a gap. You could say there was several eras between the 98T and the F2004, but unfortunately, none of those vehicles are represented in Assetto Corsa. Unfortunately, I wish they were, but we're stuck with what we got. The F2004, big difference. Of course, we're using the V10, 7-speed sequential gearbox. We're actually using the floppy paddles for the first time. We got the grooved slick tires though, with a lot more advanced aero, and we got traction control as well. So this car, I personally don't really like this car to drive. I just feel it's just unintuitive. Like it's very easy, and this is only like my second lap that you're seeing. You just kind of you know, it doesn't really require effort. You know, you got traction control, you got the arrow, you got the sequential gearbox doing all the work for you, so you don't really have to worry about anything. It's pretty well represented through this lap. It's just uneventful. I mean, I'm not going particularly fast. Like, I'm missing some apexes and my line's not exactly perfect, but I mean, compared to the 98T, having that traction control, having that better arrow, and having that sequential gearbox, it's not even close. Perhaps in a straight line, the 98T would be better, and especially with the mechanical grip, it would be better, but arrow and the gearbox make sure that that is not how it is. And we could just floor it out of the final turn because we got traction control, and yeah. And I also, we're here under the V8 card now. I don't know if it's just me, but the V8 Ferraris, obviously from 2013, it does not feel right. I don't know what it is. This car has curves. We got the 7-speed sequential again, and this is also the first time that we're going to see DRS. So we're using our curves all the way up until the start line, and you can see there I got to tap the wall because this car has a very odd steer ratio, which is basically the ratio with how much you turn the wheel and how much the actual wheels on the car turn. It feels very odd, at least compared to the other F1 cars that we have, the modern F1 cars, that is. But I mean, as you see, it's just grippy. Using our curves, we get about one usage of it per lap. You're using our curves and DRS down the camel straight, helping us a bit, even though we lack some power from the F2004. We obviously are back on slicks, Pirelli slicks, a lot grippier than those grooved tires that we had in the F2004. No traction control though. And down into the chicane, you see it's just letting the arrow and the tires do everything. Not really much effort put into it. And a bit, we probably could have taken second there. And a bit wide. It's fine, we're coming down to Blanchement, and I mean, you know the drill now, it's all going to be flat from here, and braking as slow as we comfortably can. And we're holding second because we just got a little bit of curves that we're going to use on this start kind of straight, and yeah, lap time was slower than the F2004. Unsurprisingly. But now we're on to the SF15, which was the first hybrid. Obviously not the first hybrid in F1, but the first hybrid in Assetto Corsa. So V6 turbo hybrid, got the 1.6 liter V6 turbo with a much more sophisticated hybrid system than we saw in the 2013 car. So coming up 8th. And we got DRS again, a bit more power than we had in the V8, but still not as much as the F2004 just yet. The car, you can see it's pretty quick. The transmission is very smooth, it's barely even noticeable. Bit of understeer there, but the car is extremely planted, and not just because of the arrow, but just the balance of the car. The front grip of the front tires and the rear, it feels very natural. I feel like this car, at least of the modern F1 cars, I'm talking like F2004 to the SF70, is probably the most on a natural feeling. It's definitely my favorite to drive. But coming down here fourth, being basically perfect corners to the chicane. Could have gone a bit wider on the exit, but it's fine. And yeah, flat through here, bit of the inside curb, bit of the exit curb. Still fine. Now we have the automatic play. Every time you see that blue light though on the right of the display, you can see that's when I am manually deploying the ERS, using that bit on the back straight and then as well as Blanchement. And here you got to be careful because this is a turbo car. It tries to spin up on the wheels. Now the SF70H. Now this may just be me. Well, I don't think this is just me. I feel like this is a problem that other people have discussed. The SF70 is definitely not as quick as it should be. Driving it, it feels odd. Especially the tires are massive compared to any other era. The tires are just absolutely massive on this car, the 2017 era. Aero is the most advanced F1 has ever seen. These were the fastest cars in history at the time of 2017 and their evolution all the way up into 2020. These were the fastest cars ever. Now, unfortunately, Assetto Corsa just doesn't seem to capture that. This car actually gets a lap time that was slower than the SF15, which 100% would not have happened. This car should be more powerful. This car should have around 1,000 horsepower. This car should have extremely advanced tires, just fly to the corners, and the mechanical grip should be spot on. Should be the best here, rivaling the 98T's qualifying tires. But unfortunately, that's not the case. The car is extremely nervous. Like it feels vague. The force feedback whenever you're driving this thing, it feels like it's just like on the edge of snapping at any point. But it definitely takes some experience to learn how to drive this. But is it coming through small flat as per usual? It's basically the same lines that we took in the SF15, which is the problem. This car should be a lot quicker than the SF15. Obviously, DRS onto the final straight and we're done. So now, this is our final comparison between the SF70H, the most modern Formula 1 car, the 2017 era, the last era, not the current era anymore, and then the first F1 car released in Assetto Corsa, the Maserati 250F. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here to watch this side-by-side comparison. I'll see you guys in the next one.